Hi, blockchain visionaries. I'm George Levy. Today I have the opportunity to speak with Gurinder Singh-Mann. He's an enterprise blockchain specialist, and it's going to be a very interesting conversation. Gurinder, great speaking with you.
Great speaking with you too.
I actually teed this up specifically because I talk a lot about blockchain and cryptocurrency, and many people have a hard time separating blockchain and Bitcoin. I want to talk to you specifically because you're a specialist in the blockchain as applied to enterprise space. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I'm glad you began it that way. Reality is blockchain came from Bitcoin. So that's where we've all heard of it, and Bitcoin was the first implementation of this technology, right? So we tend to associate it with ICOs and cryptocurrencies. In fact, I've actually had people come up to me where I've had enterprise talks and ask me about what my opinion would be where cryptocurrencies were heading. I was like, that's not the point of the talk. From an enterprise space, the technology holds a lot of value. And why I say that is it allows us to do business in a way that we haven't done before, right? So we can create trust in a network in a way that we didn't have an example that I often use is it's kind of like rebuilding the internet itself, right? Previously data was held by a select few and then they share it. And that's how you get your information. Now, the data is held by the network, and then we're sharing what's on the network, right? So we don't have a single source of truth. Now, when you're looking at enterprises, we're looking at different types of applications and different concerns than you might have on a public blockchain. One of the things you'll notice with enterprises right away, like over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of security hacks. We've seen a lot of hacking that's been done. So a lot of data loss, that's important to enterprises. They want to know who the participants are on the network. And the type of data that they're going to be storing, they want to be able to be very specific that this is the type of data and the volume, right? So there's typically a lot of volume going into there. Performance is another concern. So when we're looking at these kind of things, that's where enterprise blockchains start to differentiate from public blockchains. And there is a need for both of them. But a B2B use case scenario dictates a very different type of setup. So if I were talking about a supply chain scenario, we could say, let's say I'm producing soap, and I want to be producing it sustainably. I want to be producing it in an environmentally conscious way. It's important for my customers, so I need to dictate that to them. I can work with my vendors and make sure that we don't have any of those hiccups that it's going to be on CNN tomorrow and we're going to find out, wait, we were hiring a vendor that happened to be working with child labor, for instance, or maybe they're burning down forests or something like that. We can dictate that by actually putting that into the chain itself. And as a customer, when they actually, we can share that data with them. So they can actually go down to a single bar of soap and say, okay, where were the materials harvested? How were they harvested? And we can actually gain confidence. And that's something that's becoming more and more important. As consumers are becoming socially conscious, they are more concerned about how they're getting their products. And I think one of the conversations we had, you did mention that consumers buy with their wallets, right? Like they vote with their wallets, and that's important. And that's how we have to communicate with them.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up some really interesting points in your conversation. One of them was you mentioned the term of a single source of truth.
Yeah.
And so I always talk about a single source of truth that everybody agrees upon. So the idea is once you have a blockchain, everybody has to, you can't bring into the supply chain products that are coming from child labor because they're going to know that it came from child labor, right? You can't just like run your own version of the truth in parallel. Everybody needs to agree on what this bar of soap is. Yeah. That's why you can get the entire provenance of it. Now, the interesting thing though is that in the enterprise space, when you're dealing in Bitcoin, you're dealing with a lot of different nodes, and all of these nodes are decentralized. Nobody really is the owner of anyone. There's no CEO of Bitcoin. But in the enterprise space, you don't need to apply it in that. You can actually build it on cloud, like Azure. You can build it on Amazon Web Services. You can use a permission database. I want to hear about that because you still have to find a way to make sure that everybody agrees on it, but you're spreading that truth across a lot of players and you're building it on the cloud. Tell me more.
Yeah, so a perfect example about it is it's depending on the number of nodes that we have. So the nodes are the ones that are going to hold the data, right? Now it's typical if you have a enterprise blockchain that you're going to have multiple people wanting that information. Not everyone has the same level of access. So one of the things you'll notice in a public blockchain, everything is readable by anyone.
Right.
Right. In a permission blockchain, talking about the bar of soap, maybe I want to share with a shipping company when the harvesting is done. Right. So I want some information. I need them to communicate together, and maybe they need to do a certain amount of work together. But each of the companies that are working together, they may not need full information. So when I'm actually selling my soap, maybe I want to store some of the information of the costs related to that. I'm gonna publish the cost maybe for the vendor, so the vendor can see their costs, but I don't want the shipping costs being shown to them.
Makes sense.
I don't want my business data available to everyone, right? Now, it's interesting you talked about cloud, and this is where I think it's game changing for blockchain, especially because blockchain is really the backbone upon which you build a network or you build your applications. What really makes it, what can help your chain really, or your application really grow fast is how do you integrate it? What are you integrating with it? And in this day and age, services are coming up faster and faster. With cloud, we have platform as a service opportunities, right? So we can just plug into services that are already provided to us. So for instance, even if we are looking at something, let's say Hyperledger Fabric, and we have a single node on which we are doing reporting, I can grab that data and I can actually clean it, I can present it, I can manipulate it much faster. Maybe I need to combine it with other data that's actually from my own warehouses. I can do that. So I can actually bring multiple different business units together, different areas, and all of a sudden now I'm starting to get a different level of workload that I didn't have before. Another area that I like to talk about, especially with clients, is when you initially publish your region. Let's say we publish in Eastern US, and that's the region that we have our nodes in. Tomorrow we want to be working in Europe. Now, in the cloud, it's much easier. We can just, there's data centers already available to us. We can publish those services right there. We want to be as close as possible to our consumers, right? So if we're launching a new product in Europe, I want to be there, right? And I want my network to be able to handle the load that's coming on. And that's where cloud really makes a big difference in these kind of scenarios.
You know, it's interesting that you brought that up because we were talking about several points. So when I think about blockchain applications and some of the things that are built, some of them are built on Ethereum.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that always comes to mind whenever I think about Ethereum is the fact that when CryptoKitties came out, the whole network almost came down because so many people were using CryptoKitties. Well, that becomes a big problem. If I actually built my applications on Ethereum, well, that jeopardizes me too. The fact that CryptoKitties just took down the network. Now, if you're actually using cloud, you could just basically just increase the size of your network.
Yes. So on the cloud, you can actually provision even Ethereum nodes, and you can do private instances of Ethereum, right?
So not just Hyperledger, you can run Ethereum running on the cloud too.
Yeah, there's lots of blockchain networks that you can actually provision with, whichever one works best for your use case scenario, right? But I think that was a great example. Ethereum, CryptoKitties. Let's talk about that for a second. Actually.
I love CryptoKitties. I have several.
Oh well, you're ahead of me. But so one of the problems with a public blockchain. Let's just talk about the public blockchain outside of the cloud for a second. Public blockchain, permission blockchain. So I'll talk about it compared to like Hyperledger Fabric, for instance. The way Ethereum works is you have your order execute. So anytime a transaction comes in, I have to figure out where the order is going to go onto the block, and then I have to execute that. The execution process is where you do the mining and all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, we have an incentivization process where we pay miners to mine, right? Or in the proof of stake, there's a different process. We go through that whole 9 yards, but it takes time to do this. Now, when you're looking at an enterprise kind of blockchain, something like Hyperledger Fabric, it's built up from the ground level to be performant. The entire architecture is pluggable. So if we're looking at the process of how consensus is done, it actually does it the opposite way. It executes first. So there's only a small set of peers, which we could call nodes, but a small set of peers that can endorse a transaction coming in. We may not want everybody in the network endorsing, right?
Interesting.
So they endorse that process, It goes back, and then from there we give it to the ordering service. So anytime any one of these services...
And you can set all that up. You can set your own consensus rules.
Oh, absolutely. And then anytime it goes to the ordering service, let's say the ordering service is bogged down, we can actually, run up more nodes. We can provide a higher level just for that area, right? And then after that, it's where it gets executed on each peer. That peer will then validate if this is a valid transaction or not. So you see the way the process is set up in the permission blockchain, or Hyperledger Fabric specifically, is it's meant to grow fast. It's scalable, right? And this is something in an enterprise scenario, again, what you said is it's not okay for a system to be down, right? Consumers are impatient, I know I am. If I'm going online and I'm shopping for something, or I'm looking for something, and if it's not registering in the right amount of time, I'm out. I'll go elsewhere, right? And that's a concern. That's lost business, right? Lost revenue. Now the other aspect of it is exactly what you said, is with cloud, we can run up nodes really fast, right? And I don't have to worry about the physical hardware. The other aspect of it is with the new, with the service models that are coming out, like we can use serverless functions and all these other areas. It's so much faster to deploy, even for your team. So your development team, when they're working, they don't have to build out every single aspect of it. And often one of the things I actually help clients with when they are actually looking at doing a deployment of this type is get your DevOps process right from the get-go. So when you're deploying, you know that you can test it. You know that, let's say you have to show it to an investor, you can have something up and you're not working the night before.
Right.
Oh my God, someone checked in some bad code and everything's gone down and we're not able to do that, right?
No, that's incredible. Let me ask you a question, Gurinder. For the audience, you actually have a lot of experience. How can people find out more about you? How can they follow you?
Yeah, often you can follow me on Twitter at Gurinder S-Man. I know that's...
Gurinder is G-U-R-I-N-D-E-R.
Yeah. I chose as long a name as possible so you couldn't find me. No, but, or you could just Google me. I've done courses on LinkedIn Learning, specifically for Azure and Hyperledger Fabric. Excellent. So you can find me there. And you could also follow me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Gurinder, thank you so very much.
It was a pleasure.
Wishing you much success and looking forward to more blockchain applications from you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
I'm George Levy. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something in the process. I bring you brand new videos every single week, so make sure to subscribe to this channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm George Levy. We're changing the world, one blockchain at a time. See you next time.